All right, let's talk about something truly incredible. We're going to go on a journey, one of the most miraculous journeys you can possibly imagine. It's the story of your own heart and how we beat for the very, very first time. This is a story of absolute precision, of perfect timing, and just awe-inspiring creation. And the most amazing part? It all begins in secret, silently, long before anyone in the world even has a clue that you're there. So, I have a question for you, right off the bat. When do you think it happens? Seriously, take a guess. Do you think it's at 8 weeks? Maybe 6 weeks? Four? Most of us have some idea in our heads, right? Probably based on things we've heard from doctors or seen on TV. But I'm going to tell you right now the real answer? It's probably way, way earlier than you think. So stick with me and let's uncover this amazing truth together. Now, to get to that incredible answer, we first have to get one really important thing straight. You see, pregnancy doesn't just run on one clock. It actually runs on two different clocks at the exact same time. And believe it or not, this is where almost all the confusion comes from. Yeah, just this one simple mix-up is the source of so much misunderstanding. But understanding this is the absolute key. Once you can see the difference between these two clocks, the entire timeline of how life begins just snaps into place, crystal clear. So let's solve this little puzzle, shall we? Okay, here they are, the two clocks. First up, you've got what's called gestational age. This is the timeline your doctor uses. It's the doctor's clock. And here's the crazy part. It starts counting from the first day of the last menstrual period. That's about 2 weeks before you were even conceived. Then you have the embryonic age. Now, this is your true biological age. This is the baby's real age, and its clock starts at the exact moment of fertilization, the moment your life was initiated by Allah's will. This means when a doctor tells a mother she's 4 weeks pregnant, the tiny life inside her is actually only 2 weeks old. That 2 week difference, let me tell you, it changes everything. Now that we've got our clocks synchronized, let's rewind. Let's go all the way back to day zero of your real age, the moment of fertilization. Your entire existence didn't begin as a baby or even something that looked like one. Nope. It began as a single cell on an absolutely epic and frankly perilous mission, a mission willed into being by the Creator. It's a pretty profound thought when you really stop and think about it. Your entire, complex being, everything you are, your thoughts, your hopes, your laughter, even that heartbeat we're talking about, all of it, every single part, began from one single cell. This first cell, the zygote, was a marvel. It contained the complete, God-given blueprint for your entire life. And what a mission it was. In just 7 days, that one single cell had to pull off a flawless plan. First, fertilization. The mission is a go. Immediately, it started dividing, and dividing, and dividing in a process called cleavage, all while traveling down the fallopian tube like a tiny astronaut on a crucial journey. Soon, it formed a solid little ball of cells called a morula, kind of looking like a microscopic raspberry. But it didn't stop there. This little team of cells then transformed into a hollow structure, the blastocyst, preparing for its final, critical objective, landing in implantation. Around day 7, it reached its destination and successfully burrowed into the wall of the uterus. Mission accomplished. Touchdown was a success. So once it's securely implanted, the next massive phase begins. The mission is no longer about travel, it's about construction. We're talking about an unbelievably complex, skyscraper-level construction project, all being guided by that divine blueprint packed inside those tiny cells. And get this, by the second week of its real existence, the entire embryo is just zero point 0.2 millimeters in size. It's almost impossible to even imagine something that small. That's right, smaller than a single grain of salt. Think about that for a second, and yet somehow, packed into this microscopic being are the complete and perfect instructions from Allah for building an entire human: the brain, the lungs, the eyes, the hands, and yes, the heart. The sheer mind-boggling complexity packed into a space that tiny is one of the most powerful signs of his immense power. So, how in the world does this happen? Well, the cells, in their infinite wisdom, start to organize themselves. They form 3 master layers, which biologists call the germ layers. You can think of them as the primary construction materials for the whole project. One layer is destined to become the skin, the nervous system, and the brain. Another layer will form the muscles, the skeleton, and the circulatory system. And the third layer, that's for all the internal organs. Every single part of you right now originated from one of these 3 layers, all according to his perfect design. And it's from that middle layer that our story's hero emerges, the heart. The construction begins at a furious pace. And then, very, very soon, a moment arrives that just defies imagination. The very first beat. And here it is, the moment of truth. The answer we've been building up to. The very first heartbeat doesn't happen at 6 weeks, it doesn't happen at 4 weeks, it happens on day 16. Just 16 days after you began as a single cell, your heart tissue gives its first tiny rhythmic twitch. This is incredible because it's even earlier than the old scientific belief, which was day 21. And it's weeks before it could ever be detected by even the most powerful ultrasound, which usually can't pick it up until around day 40 or even later. Now, the heart doesn't just pop into existence as the four-chambered organ we know and love. No, it starts out much simpler. It begins as a simple tube. 2 tiny, separate blood vessels, guided by a perfect, intricate design, move toward each other and fuse together. They merge to form this primitive heart tube. And then, on day 16, by divine command, the simple tube begins to contract. It begins to beat. Once that first beat happens, the development just hits the accelerator. It's breathtaking. By the time the heartbeat is finally big enough to be detected, around week 6 of gestational age, it's already pulsing away at 90 to 110 beats per minute. But it doesn't stop there. It then speeds up dramatically, peaking around week 9 at a staggering 175 beats per minute. That's faster than most adults' hearts during an intense workout. After that, it settles into its normal, healthy fetal range. Okay, so we've established the science. The heart starts beating on day 16. But this new knowledge brings up a really practical and, for many expectant parents, a very emotional question when they go in for that first doctor's visit. This is the question, isn't it? The one that can cause so much worry and anxiety. If this tiny heart is beating away so early, why the long, agonizing wait to hear that beautiful, reassuring sound? Well, the answer really comes down to 2 things: technology and scale. On day 16, the embryo is microscopic. Its heartbeat is just a flicker, far too small and way too faint for any machine on Earth to detect. So here's how it usually plays out. A more sensitive transvaginal ultrasound can typically start to detect that heartbeat around week 6 of gestational age. If you're using a standard abdominal ultrasound, the kind they just put on the belly, you might have to wait until week 7 or even week 8 because the embryo needs to be a little bigger. The key thing to remember here is that the heart has already been beating faithfully for weeks before we ever get the incredible privilege of listening in. So what happens if you go in for that 6-week appointment and the doctor says they can't find a heartbeat yet? The first thing to know is, don't panic. This is actually very common, and it's often not a cause for alarm. The most frequent reason is just a simple miscalculation of the dates. An irregular cycle, or ovulating just a few days later than you thought, can easily shift the whole timeline. Sometimes it's the machine, or honestly, it's just a little tiny bit too early. In the vast majority of cases, the doctor will have you come back in a week. And there it is, that strong, steady beat everyone was waiting for. And all of this brings us to a really beautiful piece of wisdom, doesn't it? Patience is beautiful. It is such a powerful reminder to just trust the process. This incredible, miraculous journey of life unfolds on its own perfect schedule, the one decreed by Allah. All we can do is witness it with patience, with hope, and with absolute awe. So let's end with this thought. A single cell, smaller than a speck of dust, went on the journey of a lifetime. It divided, it traveled, it implanted itself, and it built itself from a blueprint into a complex being with a beating heart, all in just over 2 weeks. Every step unfolding silently, perfectly, by the will and command of its creator. When you truly stop and think about it that way, what miracle in the entire universe could possibly be greater than that?